Now, I don't know about you, but I find when I take fewer shots, they are better shots. So it was with a trip I took out recently into my local hills when I ventured out with my Bronica, my newly repaired Bronica, and I intended to get a few better images than I've been taking lately. I've been a little bit trigger happy with the smaller formats, so I decided to settle down and only shoot things which I thought were really worthwhile and may end up as a print. Well, things did look promising indeed. I mean, just look at the sky here. We have some beautiful conditions. This is that sharp winter light you get, which I absolutely love. And I was very optimistic as I set off up the hills, although it was very, very windy. And that's one thing which would come to affect my photography for the day, shall we say. But initially, high hopes and a fantastic location here overlooking a real Welsh castle above Llangollen. So far so good, but things didn't turn out as planned. Well, I am pleased to say that I am back out with my Bronica after a bit of a break. The Bronica has been repaired. I'm not going to talk too much about this just yet because it's early days. Well, I'll have to leave the audio there. It was just too windy, even with the lav mic and the little dead cat on there. Far too noisy to record. So anyway, the upshot is that I had set myself up with a lovely view using some foreground rocks you can see just behind me. And I decided for a change to go with the wide-angle lens. I mean, the wide-angle lens isn't something I normally use at this location, but it did suit the particular shot I wanted with those rocks there in the foreground, as I said. And it also gave a nice sweep of the valley behind and onto the castle. Now, because it was very sunny and there was a punchy blue sky in there, I actually used a polarizer this time instead of the yellow filter, and that did give me a very strong sky. So I braved the winds. I had to lean on the tripod a couple of times to stop it blowing away. But I did manage to get 2 frames in between the gusts, and this is what I got. Now, I'm quite pleased with this shot. It's not overly dramatic, and I've not processed it as such. It's quite subtle and modest, and it does portray the feeling of the day with the wind. I ensured that foreground rock was really sharp focus, because if that was slightly soft, you'd notice straight away and it'd ruin the shot. And it degrades nicely into the background, although that is sharp as well. It doesn't drop off. I used f16. Now, one thing I do like about this shot is the valley in the distance off into the Clwydian Hills. Now, that is something which the eye is drawn to by the opposing structures of the castle and the rock in the foreground. Well, apologies for the wind up there. I may have had to do a voiceover. Yeah, I don't normally shoot with a wide-angle lens around here. I'm not really a wide-angle fan, but I love the sky. And I did want that foreground rock in there. I needed it sharp, so had I gone for a medium telephoto or my standard lens, I couldn't have got it all sharp. And also, another thing as well, the castle has some work being carried out on it, and there is blue sheeting and scaffolding in the distance. Now, with a wide-angle lens in black and white, that will not particularly show up. It may not show up at all. Now, rather than shoot the castle all day with that awful scaffolding, bit of a cliche anyway, I'm going to try those trees I went for earlier this year. I haven't got the rain today, which is fortunate, because last time I came they were absolutely saturated. The contrast was gone, there was no glow, there was nothing special about them. Today I've got bright sun, maybe a bit much, but I'd rather have that than the rain. Oh, and also, because I'm shooting XP2 Super, that's my favourite film for controlling highlights. It really does hold them back, so I don't have to worry if it is a bit bright on some of the branches where the bark has been torn off. If I was shooting a conventional film, I'd probably have to reduce the development time by about 25%, and that would also reduce the contrast. So I think XP2 Super is the right choice today. Well, typically the forecast was for no rain and sun, so it's chucking it down. I think this is a tree I shot just a few months ago. I'm pretty certain actually. It looks like it's blown down, so if it is the one, no more compositions for me. Now, it is just not possible to shoot out in that wind. It will blow my camera over, and I've just had the thing repaired, so I'm not paying out again. So I'm going to have to find something within these trees. Now, that was easier said than done, because there is an awful lot of movement here, and the The wind was whipping away all the time, which does distract you when you're trying to set up for a shot. But I did walk around for a couple of miles trying my best to isolate something which would work for me. Oh, apologies, it is the tree, still here. And so's all the rubbish. Now I'd say this sort of photography and forest photography in general is probably the hardest form of landscape photography because everything's such a mess. You have to sort out the jumble and the clutter. It's all about cropping in. You try and get a wide angle in this area and it'll just be just your eye gets dragged all over the frame by branches and twigs and light coming through. It's just hard. Well, having said it's hard, the rewards are therefore all the greater. All the greater. The rewards are all the greater because making sense of this mess is a real challenge, and I'm up for that, especially this year coming when I want to be doing more local photography, more close-up photography, more, well, I use that word intimate. I'm not quite sure really if that's the right word for it, but certainly seeing something other people don't see. And in order to do that seeing, I have to be a little bit more patient. Now, I'm not very patient. I remember reading Ansel Adams' autobiography once, and he said that if the light wasn't right, he could have waited around, but typically he jumped back in his station wagon and went somewhere else. That's how we got Moonrise Hernandez. He was driving along, he quickly saw the opportunity, set up, got one frame with his 8x10, and then the light went. So I have to change my approach a little bit if I want to see things in this clutter rather than run around blasting away at useless shots. So I'm going to have to train myself to slow down. Hard. Yeah, I think I'm missing the sheep. They've all gone in their lodgings for winter. It's just not the same without them. No, I really did want to get something in those woods there, but it was too windy, and even with a bit of shelter, the little twigs and branches were wafting about. And at f/22 with a film camera like this, you'd be talking half a second, so I'd get too much movement, so I'm going to have to brave the winds. So surprisingly, overall a good result. Now, that wasn't my first thoughts when I got back to the car after yomping around for many hours, but on reflection, and once I developed the film, I was quite pleased. I only took one shot. I do like that shot. It's well balanced, it's well composed, and the gentle look to it, it's not dramatic. Now, had I taken some of the other shots, which I was previewing and I was struggling with, I wouldn't have printed them. They would have been a waste of time and effort. They would have just clogged up my library and they would have taken more money, more film, etc, etc. So overall, I was actually pleased with the outcome of the day. So the takeaway from this has been, I'm not going to view such trips again as a failure if I don't manage to rattle off a roll of film or 2 rolls of films. It's all a question of getting the right shots. Now, if I ended up at the end of the year only shooting a dozen images, but they're all good images, that would be a good year. If I shot 10,000 images, but there were only a dozen ones in there, that would actually be a bad year because the keeper rate would be very low. And something I'm keen on doing this year is getting the keeper rate up. So I was a happy bunny in the end, and yes, more of those trips in the future, I think. So thanks for watching as ever, and I'll see you again soon.